What is going on, guys? My name is Will, but you can call me Tate. And what you might not have known is that my old channel name used to be Top Thrill Dragster Man, meaning I have had a strong fondness for the original Top Thrill Dragster. It's the reason that I became a coaster enthusiast. It's the reason that I started this channel, and it's the reason that I have an engineering degree. That's how interested I was in that ride. So I've seen a lot of Top Thrill 2 reviews and a lot of Top Thrill 2 videos, and what I really wanted to do was come out with one from the perspective of somebody who loved the original Dragster, and yeah, give you, all of my reviews, of course, of Top Thrill 2, because that's the ride that we're focusing on, but I'm going to compare it to the old one in a lot of ways, and I really want to give a really in-depth review of Top Thrill 2. We're going to cover the restraints, the ride, the ride experience itself, the area, the atmosphere, the queue line, everything that as it pertains to the original versus the new one. So yeah, I'm going to give my full review on Top Thrill 2. Obviously, there are vlogs on the channel of me getting my first rides and also an off-ride footage video as well that I'm going to be sharing. So yeah, let's get deep into this video. So I want to echo again that this is my first time using this new microphone, so I'm sorry if a little of the settings need tweaked. I literally just got it out the box, performed some tests, and hopefully it sounds very good. But let's start first with the area and the theme. So of course, Top Thrill Dragster always had such a strong presence, and what we did better than Six Flags Great Adventure is that our Stratocoaster is in the middle of the park. So it really feels like all roads lead to Top Thrill Dragster, the most daunting and tallest ride in the park. So it definitely still has this presence. It's now 2 towers as opposed to just the one initial one. And what I really love that Cedar Point did is they kept the lights on the tower. That was always one of my favorite parts, because from anywhere in the park, well, anywhere where you can see the lights, you could tell that the train was going and that, somebody was about to launch 120 miles per hour. So I definitely think the ride still has this amazing presence in the center of the park. Now, they did, of course, refresh the area with Top Thrill 2. They added some new signage and just repainted the blacktop black, which I know sounds weird, but they did paint it black, and just this area does look refreshed and awesome. I am really happy with what they did with the area, and again, it still has such a strong presence as it used to before. And moving on to the theme, I actually always thought that Dragster was one of the amazing themed rides out there. While people say it was basic, I mean, what more could you theme a ride that goes that fast to? And going in, the main difference is, of course, they've still got the lights, there's still a Christmas tree, but the sounds. Now, you will continue to hear the original Dragster sound in my intro because I just love it that much, and I'm going to pause so you can hear that here. Now, moving on to Top Thrill 2, and of course, it's still got the racing theme, and there's still some racing noises, but to be honest, I'm not sure what the sonic boom that plays as soon as the countdown starts is, and of course, it plays that sonic boom back twice when the car goes back through it the third time on the way to the third launch. So again, I'm going to pause so you can hear that, but not sure what exactly it is. I'm glad that there's still noises, because one of my favorite things was when you would walk up to the ride, you could hear that it was in action by hearing all of the sound effects. But yeah, I'm gonna play a couple of clips now so that you can hear what I'm talking about with Top Thrill 2. Now, the clip I added in at the end there is just really a weird thing to me. If you go and watch my off-ride video, you'll see it happens every time, but once it makes it over the top, it's almost like the ride does a little emo and does that little song and dance as soon as it makes it over, which I just think is the funniest thing. But I am glad, again, that there is still audio. I probably love it. Of course, the old one is nostalgic to me, but I'm glad that they still went through the effort of theming and having music playing throughout this area. And yeah, I would say that they are even in this aspect. So working our way through this ride experience, the next thing we have is the queue line. So this is actually a very, very different aspect going from Top Thrill 2 from Top Thrill Dragster. So, of course, Top Thrill Dragster had one main queue, and it was between the launch track and the break track. And it was always awesome, standing there, hearing the ride run, seeing it go over the top hat is also very, very cool to see. Now, I, of course, can't film the new queue line that's between the tracks because you have to put everything in a locker. So this is kind of where the ride is a big mess for me, Top Thrill 2 at least. So there's basically 3 queue lines. You wait in a queue line to get up to the locker checkpoint. And then, of course, once you get there, you can place your stuff in a locker. After that, you wait in your second line to go through the metal detection right before the ride itself. And then once you go through the second line, you are now in the actual queue line of the ride, which again, I can't take footage of because you're not allowed to bring anything in there. But when you're in that part of the line, essentially, there's not a lot of cattle pens. It's basically a straight shot with both the fast lane and the main queue. So they're pretty much the same length. So depending on which group of people they're letting in quicker will determine how fast the line moves compared to fast lane. But they're pretty much a straight shot. So it is 3 sort of lines that you have to get through before you are actually on the ride itself. And to be honest, this locker system is a complete mess. So the queue board actually only says what the line is for the line that's between the launch and the break track, the actual main queue of the ride. But I found that when I used fast lane, I waited 40 minutes just to get through to the main line, doing the first 2 lines, and then another 40 minutes within the actual line itself for the ride, just because of how long it takes to put your things in a locker and wait through those lines. So this is actually a mess. There's always a lot of people right by the entrance because of this locker system, and I'm not really sure what Cedar Point can do about it. Comment down below if you guys have any better ideas, but it's kind of a mess right now with having to wait in 3 lines and just how slow it moves getting through those first 2 lines to get your stuff in a locker and then into the actual line itself. Now, before we enter the queue, I just wanted to say, so I have waited a lot outside of the original Dragster's entrance while it was either broken down or down for wind in order to, get a ride on the original Dragster. But none of those are as bad as my first time trying to ride Top Thrill 2. Again, I've got the full vlog on the channel, but the amount that I had to wait, I waited probably 5 hours for this ride to open. And that's just because, obviously it was earlier in the season. It wasn't opening day. So you would have thought they would have had a little bit, more under control. But the amount of tests that this thing had to do, the warm-up cycle took long. It didn't make it over the tower a countless amount of times. In fact, I've got a rollback compilation that I filmed just on this day. But yeah, I waited 5 hours for it to open. So obviously, sometimes it might be slower in getting operational, but what I want to say and give the ride props for is once this thing is operational, it flies through trains. I always thought, the original Top Thrill Dragster, it sends 2 trains at once. So, and it's a 17-second ride, so you can't really beat that capacity. But when the Top Thrill 2 is open, it is sending trains. You can see in these clips I filmed that as one finishes, the next train is already coming out of the station towards the launch area. So once the ride's open, the line does move quick, and I am actually very happy with how efficient the ride runs when it's open. Now, moving on to the final part of the ride that I want to talk about before the ride experience itself, and that is the trains, because of course, they do impact the ride experience itself. So the old Top Thrill Dragster had some of everybody's favorite restraints, the Intamin T-bars. But the problem with these restraints, especially as I've become more of a bigger guy, is that they were always extremely tight and extremely restrictive to the size of person who could ride. So I would say if you were around like 280 pounds, you were not able to get the seatbelt underneath the lap bar, across, which was the requirement to ride. And yeah, it was very, very tight, as good of a restraint as that was. Now going to Top Thrill 2, the restraints are more of like the new style Intamin and Mac lap bars that do come from the over-the-shoulder restraint. And I would say that now the maximum weight is about 315 pounds for you to ride. So they are more accessible, and I would say that they are very, very comfortable, probably just as comfortable as the T-bars, which is actually very important because you do get some airtime on this ride. So I want to give props to Zamperla for making a more accessible train that is also just as comfortable. So yeah, if you couldn't fit on the original Dragster, maybe on Top Thrill 2 you'll be able to fit, as I tested in my vlog. It is definitely more size accessible now. Now, finally moving on to the ride experience itself. So you're going to roll out of the station slowly. Of course, we're starting with Top Thrill 2, and I will only make a couple of comparisons to Dragster. So you start coming out of the station slowly, then you go on the S-bend, that of course is a switch track, where you'll then wait for a few seconds once you pause. Then the countdown will start, and you will begin your first launch. Now, this launch reminds me a little bit of like a Copperhead Striker, like a Mac launch that's just been elongated. But if you are in the front row, you will still get some wind at the tail end of this front launch. And then, of course, you'll start going up what everybody calls their rollback, or what the park calls it, but we all know, of course, is not an actual rollback. Now, it is very cool to go up this element and look at the tower itself. And again, it might only go a third of the way up, but that is still taller than a lot of roller coasters. So you're going to go a third of the way up. You're looking up at the tower. I think it's very, very cool. And then I didn't get too much airtime at this moment, but of course you're going to stall out and then start rolling backwards. Now, this was everybody's favorite moment of the ride of the early reviews, and that is the backwards launch. And I will say, I feel like the launch itself was a little overhyped, but it is very cool going backwards. And something else I talked about in my vlog is, you know, you almost feel like you're waiting for it to kick in. It doesn't kick in till you're about a third of the way through the launch tracks. You're like, is it going to kick in? Is it going to kick in? And then boom, it kicks in and you start accelerating backwards. Again, not with too much force, but just the fact that you are going backwards faster and faster is an extremely cool effect and cool part of the ride, especially as you whiz by the stoplight and where you started at the ride right before you start shooting up the tower. Now, what I noticed the more and more I rode is just how strong the positive G-forces are when you start your ascent up this hill. I mean, it almost forces your hands down. It's that strong. Now, of course, the further back you sit, the higher you go on the tower. So when you are in the back row, you are fully above Power Tower. But when you are in the front, you're still way above Ruguru, and you can look out and still see that you are taller than Millennium, which is just such a very, very cool spectacle. And yeah, definitely changes when you're in the front versus the back. Now, again, you get a small pop of floater airtime as you start falling back down. And this is my personal favorite part of the ride. You hit the third launch. If you are in the front, you've already got wind in your face at the start of the launch, but by the time you get to the end of the third launch, again, not too much acceleration, but just the sheer speed that you start and end with, you have insane amount of wind in your face at the end of that launch, and that is my favorite part. So then you start going up and you do a twist just like, you know, the original Dragster, although with the Heartline now a little bit higher on the train, you really feel the laterals on this twist. And again, Kingda Ka was the last strata that I did, so I feel like I remember, you know, getting laterals on the twist, but now that the center of gravity is even higher, you definitely can feel the twist. Now, because I waited for the ride to open all day, it wasn't shooting over the top hat, as you can see in the footage, like it does in a lot of other people's videos. So I'm not going to say I got ejector going over the top, but I definitely got some floater. And the crazy thing is, I felt like I was out of my seat as we started the twist. Now, with the new restraints, it felt like I felt that restraint pushed into me, and you can see as you're going down, as you do the twist, it's almost like your body stays still while the twist starts because the laterals are just that snappy and fast, if that makes any sense. So you see the train twist, but the people's bodies sort of just don't move initially, of course, until, you know, they have to, because the twist just hits that fast. And that, honestly, I felt the restraint in my stomach as we were going through that twist because the laterals were so strong that the car was twisting faster than my body was expecting. So that was a very, very unexpected moment. And then, of course, you are at the bottom of the hill, accelerating towards the brake run, and that ends your Top Thrill 2 ride experience. Something else is the brakes used to start before the finish line on the original Dragster, but now they do not start, until after the finish line, and I think that's very, very cool. So drawing the comparison to the original Dragster, of course, there's only one launch instead of three, and that hydraulic launch, for those who did it, especially those who did it in the front, as well as anybody who's done Kingda Ka, you know that it's my favorite coaster element of all time. It's most likely the most intense element of all time. I mean, there are no words to describe that launch. From going from 0 miles per hour to whatever, I know, of course, it wasn't the advertised speed, but from sitting still to getting the wind at the end of that launch in your face. At King Dakar, I know I could barely keep my eyes open. But from starting from zero and getting that acceleration, it was definitely an amazing feeling. But what I want to say is that that third launch on Top Thrill 2, I say you get just as much wind in your face, and of course you get it for a longer duration because you already start that third launch with 100 miles per hour. So of course I missed that launch and that acceleration, but I like that the third launch gives you that same sort of speed sensation that you got. Of course you're just not starting from zero. You don't have that feeling like you're being pulled into a black hole by that launch, but I have no problems with it, and I love the third launch on Top Thrill 2. Now, the main thing people say is that Top Thrill 2 feels like a more complete ride. And I don't want to say that that's not true, but I think what contributes to that is just the extended ride time. Now, Dragster, it was always such an intense spurt ride for me that was amazing and, just the best 17 seconds of your life. But when you extend that out, I don't think it makes the ride more complete. I just think because it lasts longer, you feel like it's more of a complete ride, if that makes any sort of sense. So, of course, there's some extra, I don't want to say elements because it's still launched and, going up a spike in airtime. But because you're not just going from 0 to 120 and then towards the end, it feels like a little bit more of a complete experience. Now, my caveat to that is that I feel like that is what gives Dragster some of the intensity that it used to have. So it used to be crazy waiting there at the stoplight, knowing that I'm about to be sitting here and then at the top of there and then at the bottom of the top hat, all in such a short span of time. But when the ride sort of warms up by, doing 3 launches, it's not as intense knowing that you're just sitting there and then you're going to be at the other side quickly, but it builds it up and does make it feel, like more of a complete ride experience. So what it loses in intensity, it gains in, I guess, maybe satisfaction in the amount of time that you wait for the experience. Because it's not as intense because you're not going, that fast from 0 to 420 feet to back down. But it does make the ride feel a little bit more complete as it takes longer to do, sort of the same process. Now, one last thing that I wanted to mention, and that is the smoothness of these rides. Now, I never heard anybody actually talk about it, but towards the end of its life, Top Thrill Dragster had the same problem that King Dakar had, while not being as bad, but it actually was rough in the back few rows towards the end of the launch and going up towards the top hat. I started to notice that in my last few rides in those last few years of the ride, but compared to Top Thrill 2, I would definitely say Dragster was a lot smoother. Now, I've done the ride in the front, the back, and the middle of the train, and to be honest, I don't notice that big of a difference in where you sit, but you can definitely feel the roughness on the second and third launches when it's going through some of its faster, periods of the ride. So definitely compared to Top Thrill Dragster, I would say Top Thrill 2 is a little rough. And yeah, it's actually bad enough that I feel like they should look into it, because it might not be bad enough where an enthusiast would feel like it impacts the ride, but I feel like a general public person, if they wrote it, they would be like, oh my goodness, that was awesome, but it was very rough towards, the end and sort of some of those very, very fast moments of the ride. So yeah, I definitely think that they should take the time to look into this. And yeah, definitely not 100% smooth Top Thrill 2. Now, coming to a close, I want to give my personal take on which one I think is better. And to be completely honest, it feels so extremely hard to do, to, think of 2 different ride experiences, of one that was older and one that's newer. But to be honest, I'm going to put them as a tie. And that does not say that I don't like one more than the other. Of course, I'm not going to rank the old Dragster now that it is a defunct ride, but just my affinity for that ride, how many times I've did it, how many times I've waited for it, and, what that ride brought me, this channel and being an enthusiast. Of course, that ride will forever be my favorite. But when it comes to Top Thrill 2, I love that we decided to keep this ride. We didn't, take the same ride as Six Flags Great Adventure and completely get rid of the strata that, would completely change our skyline. We still have the ride. It is still running. And when I was sitting there, I was just thinking on Top Thrill 2, I was like, I am so glad that we get to go over this top hat again. And I absolutely love the new ride experience. In fact, I might like the experience more than the old Top Thrill Dragster, but of course that launch on Dragster is just one of my favorite elements ever, so that's what keeps it so high for me. But I absolutely love Top Thrill 2. It is definitely a winner. You should definitely travel out to come and ride it. And yeah, from somebody who loved the old Dragster as much as I did, to say that Top Throw 2 is just as good, if not maybe even a little bit better, should tell you how amazing this ride is. And that is going to wrap up my first voiceover video I've done in so long. Thank you guys for bearing with me. Again, this is my first time using this brand new microphone, so I hope everything sounds decent and that everything came out okay. What I want to say is that I will link in the description my video of the Top Throw Dragster original off-ride, the Top Throw 2 new off-ride footage, and my vlog of my first time riding Top Throw 2, because I think that is very interesting to see what I went through to get on Top Throw 2, and I hope that they get the kinks out of the ride soon. But that is going to wrap up this video. Please let me know what your thoughts are, if you've ridden both of them, and what you guys thought of this review. I hope, again, it comes out sounding great with this new laptop and new microphone. But again, I will continue to tweak things to bring you guys the highest quality of content. But my name is Will. You guys can call me Tate. I read every comment I get, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video.
Can you catch me now?